All right. Hi, everybody. All right, I'm on. So this is the question and answer period for the engineering organization, and I want to let everybody know that this is kind of the tip of the iceberg. We have 6 wonderful engineers up here that represent actually all of PBS Works, not just PBS Professional, but Display Manager, Compute Manager, Analytics, on and on. And the tip of the iceberg is because we have an engineering organization behind all these folks. And these are the lucky people who got to sit up here. Many of you have seen, Bill asked Ravi to stand up before. Ravi's in the audience taking notes. If a question comes up that Ravi can answer, he'll stand up. But in general, we're here to answer your questions. And we might have a few questions for you guys as well. And I also have some questions just to prime the pump if we need to. Before we get started, I want to introduce everybody. Starting at your far left is Al Bayucan, and he is one of the original PBS Professional folks that was hired way back in the NASA days.
And that is a question on the scavenger hunt.
That's right.
Okay. Free answers. Then Lisa Endrjukaitis, and you've been here 8 years with Altair. Mike Karo, been in HPC for a very, very long time. Relatively recent hire to Altair. And next to him is Bhroam Mann, who is our scheduler inventor. Been with PBS Professional for 18 years. And next to him is Serguei Smirnov, who is representing all the PBS Works components. And 11 years at Altair?
14.
14, sorry. I've only been here 9, so anything before and after, longer than 9 years, I don't know too much about. Sure. And next to him is Carl Smith. Carl is a relative newcomer to the PBS team, only been here 11 years. So that's the team, and they're here to answer your questions. So shall I start off, or do we have a question ready to go? All right. I will take that as I should start off. So here's a good question. I think this is for Sergei. What about real-time analytics?
Yeah, that's a good one. Shall I stand? Will it give easier to hear or what? Anyway, so there was already quite a few questions from people asking, okay, we have historical analytics and we want to see what is happening in our cluster right now. So there was this product that John Shelley was talking about, which addresses this need to some extent, and we are really looking at it as 2 sides of the same problem. Historical analytics is just extension of what happens now, just a little bit older. So we are planning to bring these 2 products closer together and make it the analytics, which would show historical stuff if you go deeper in the past, or show 5-minute stuff if you're interested in what was happening just now 5 minutes ago. So it will all be kind of unified picture. Does it make sense? Any questions on that? Thank you.
Okay. Question from the audience. This is actually the most fun portion of the user group for us, because we get a lot of input from customers through the PM group, and you met a lot of them yesterday. But hearing it directly from the people using our products is invaluable to us. And so we'd love to get your questions. Aha, I see Bill on the move.
Yeah, I might have a couple. So one of the things that we're a beta tester for PBS Pro 13. Overall, I thought that was a very positive experience for both us and Altair. One of the things we've had a couple interrupts related to network blips, and our interconnect fabric had issues. And that kind of brought up the general topic of how you guys do testing, and specifically whether or not your test suite has the ability to simulate, spontaneous or short-lived network interrupts or failures.
I guess I can answer that, unless somebody wants to jump in. Our test suites are fairly extensive, but we know that there is no way that we can simulate every configuration, every workload, every mix of systems and operating systems that are out there that potential customers will have. This is one of the reasons why we have the beta program, and we try to get on as many systems as we can during the beta system. And we did have some networking issues at your site, and we jumped on those very, very quickly to get you new releases out there that you could test some more. And that is invaluable to us. There's not enough money in the budget to try to get all the different machines that we need to. So we do rely on great customers to help test our pre-releases. When we do find something, either through the beta program or after a release, which we really hate, we make sure to add to our test suites so that we cover that condition in the future. So the test suites are always growing. But unfortunately, there seems to always be in any release of any software on the planet, bugs. So we do try and jump on those as quickly as we can, though.
I could add to that a little bit, David.
Sure.
So using Boeing as an example, they're a beta customer to us, and at least in my mind, they're as much a partner because as closely as we work with them, we've fostered an excellent relationship. One of the things we've done specifically for Boeing, because their network infrastructure is somewhat unique in terms of the PBS world, is we've simulated a portion of their environment. They have 3 different backbone networks, for instance, and machines that utilize multiple network interfaces that are connected to multiples of these networks. We've created an environment within our virtual machines, within our testing environment, that does simulate a portion of the Boeing environment, so that we could test more thoroughly on exactly the environment that Boeing utilizes the software in. And that doesn't just go for Boeing. I think that goes for any of the customers that identify issues with their specific setups. There was another customer that I won't mention that I personally created a specific set of VMs to mimic exactly the environment that they had, so that I could reproduce a problem and address it in as short a period of time as possible. But I think it's important for all customers to know that we're very receptive. If you identify issues that are unique to your environment, we want to be very responsive, and we'll go to the extent of actually mimicking that environment as much as we possibly can to reproduce the issues.
Yeah, great, thank you. Okay. I'm actually going to answer one question that I was given because it's somewhat on the subject of testing. And let's see, have you considered using Jenkins test harness and publishing 4 sites to validate after installation? Consider for acceptance testing. Thoughts on customers contributing to the test suite? And the answer is, from the Jenkins side of it, we have not yet considered Jenkins to be used for our test suite. We actually have another product that we're using, but we do have an automated test environment that we are working on to be able to give customers where they can run in their environment, so that Mike was saying he's building up simulation machines, VMs, to simulate customer systems. What would be better than just giving people our test environment and saying, run in your environment, and we can collect logs and things. If a problem can be reproduced, we'll have everything we need. If we send out a new release and a customer is willing, we'd love to send out our test environment as well. And then as they're bringing it up and starting to put their users on, first on test systems usually, but then in production, If they can be running our automated tests periodically and we can be capturing logs, that will help us a lot to fine-tune our tests as well. And these are things that are in the works and are actually pretty close. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and I was gonna add something to like some of the bugs that I've worked and fixed in the past. You know, the PBS diags that customers will give us, you know, snapshots of logs, you know, the server priv setup, SCAD priv, those have been very valuable. I mean, there are several times that I've been able to reproduce something because of just those, you know, those logs. And we have something internal, we have tools in which we can actually take those logs and recreate an environment in a VM machine and be able to reproduce the problem.
I second that.
Okay. Questions from anybody?
I guess I'll comment and just say that you really need to remind us to do that when you think it's useful, because I know that things have been sitting in my unsupported folder for a long time, and it's not, I end up doing a whole bunch of manual gathering of logs, and then when I saw how easy it was to run, I really do encourage you to use it. So I think, help us help you.
Mm-hmm.
We're willing to say yes when you ask us to run that.
Okay.
Okay. And I know our support team is real good at reminding people as well. Okay.
We love it too.
Yeah, so I guess I have a question about replay. So let's say, for example, we have a bunch of logs that we have an issue, and we're trying to, and it's running into a problem. So I mean, do you guys have a service where we actually can replay the whole events, let's say, 3 months before, and look at the curves and everything, and actually find out, what's going on that way? I don't know if you could do that, if you could replay all the events or from the logs or whatever.
We do have the capability for that, but it's not yet available for customers. So when we get those logs from a customer, that's one of the things we do, is we go back and we replay it, trying to see the mechanisms that caused the situation to happen. As we talked about earlier at the user group meeting, is we are working on that we can provide that as a product. But right now it's just internal engineering use.
Yeah. Would you consider it like a professional services engagement if we able to engage you guys to actually go through and replay and see? This way we could find the weak points on our design or our implementation of it. And better understand how we can, what's going to happen if let's say we add, 10,000 cores, or we add, 50 new heavy hitters on the system and things like that. So I was wondering if you would consider professional services in that respect.
I'm not sure I understand the question. You're talking about different scenarios that you could run through the simulation?
Well, let's see, if I wanted to understand the history and I didn't have the analytics product, or maybe there's something in the analytics product that's not as complete as a replay would do, right? So we could understand more in depth of what was going on with the system, and then for planning for the future too. But it's not available. It's not available for customers, but would it be available for, let's say, a professional services engagement or something like that?
I think I understand the question.
Okay.
And I think the best person to answer the question you actually just handed the mic to.
Yeah. I was thinking that was more a business question than engineering.
I was waiting for David to just say, sorry, you're asking if we would accept money for something. You need to talk to someone else. I'm in engineering.
They don't let us deal with money.
So.
No, I think that the short answer to the question is we've actually been putting more emphasis on benchmarking and things like replay as part of our testing and release process to ensure that not only are we avoiding regressions in terms of functionality, but in terms of performance as well. And as we build those tools up and they become more and more production ready, we'll start providing them to customers as well. in terms of a professional services contract to sort of get early access to that type of behavior so you can model whether it's beneficial to add another 5,000 nodes to your cluster. That really is more of a business question, and you know, Bill or others are going to have to answer that.
Well, of course, we'd love to. I don't know if we can right now, but we'd love to figure out what you want to do. Was there another hand up over somewhere over there? Okay. Instantly forgot whose hand was up. Is that you? You can't put your hand down.
This may be a question for Sergei, but I was talking to the distinguished gentleman in the back with the beard a while ago, but are there any plans to meet some needs as far as a dashboard for people like me? I'm not a system administrator, I'm not a user necessarily, but I manage the HPC project and across the resources across the corporation. And I was looking at the SAO dashboard, which is quite nice. Is there any thought as providing something like that as a tool so I can look at the whole system of the status of the whole system at any given point, what's going on, and do a query type of thing? What jobs are running, what software is being used, percentages, those sort of thing. I don't know if anybody else needs that type of a dashboard, but at least it's an enhancement suggestion.
Thank you. Great question. We had this discussion actually with there is Alad Joshi, who is also contributing to these discussions on analytics. Increasingly more, you will see him more in these conversations, and we may get. If you're interested and anybody else interested in this topic, we can get together and look into details. But short answer is yes. We will make PBS analytics more visual, more accessible, more dashboardy. So you come there and you see things which are important from high-level perspective. And we will make it also sufficiently customizable, because what is important on high level for one organization could be different than what is important on high level for some other organization. But yes, we want to create a view that you would just come to this and you will be able to see things are good, things are a little bit suspicious, or things are, wow, drop everything, look and see, check what's going on, fix it. So we will make it as a tool that would make this kind of representation easily available, in addition to our existing functionality, which gives you a chance to dive into details and see it. We will create a more high-level view, more of a dashboard-like. And we indeed were looking into SAO as a good example of that. So we would probably use it as a starting point. We will do it exactly the same way. We will be bring it to next level, trying to make it even more useful. That also depends on if you guys will help us to understand better what you need, and we will try to do. We are doing it for you. Does it answer your question? Did I understand it correctly? Okay, thank you.
All right, I'm back. So, at a previous PBS User Group conference, there was some discussion about a focus on small projects and knocking some things off that were kind of crowd pleasers that, like for example, the up arrow and Queue Manager. The other one that I know that's come to fruition is a replacement for PBS nodes that gives us a one-line sort of thing. So the one that I see that's still kind of hanging out that nobody's really happy with is QStat output. So is there still focus on small projects? Do you still have someone kind of focused on that? And two, is there ever going to be a son of QStat?
So the answer to the first question is yes. We are still focusing on some of the, I think we called it low-hanging fruit, sorry. And there still are people working on those types of projects. We did a lot of them in 13.0. For the second question, it's actually very similar to a question I had from from this group, actually. So who would like to answer that one?
Since I was the one that proposed the question, David asked us not just to write questions that we want the customers to ask us, but also to write questions that we'd like to ask the customers. And one of them that I expected to be asked was actually, when will PBS commands like QStat or PBS nodes provide more parsable output, so that it's not just a format that one customer likes, or the majority of customers like, but you could actually get like a JSON or an XML output from QStat, and then a site could customize a wrapper for that and make it any way they want. And that's an excellent question, and I think it's something that is overdue, just like command history and Queue Manager, and that I would like to see on the top of the list for small projects.
Yeah.
This might follow on from small projects in that it might be one. A couple of times in the discussion over the past 2 days, we've been talking about information going back to the end user at the end of a job, like how much wall time did it use, other kind of tracking of job resources. Is it a good time to think about having a default end of job report that gets delivered back to the user along with their standard out and standard error file that contains some useful information like the amount of wall time used and perhaps whatever resources you can collect from that particular system as to what that job did and how long it took?
So actually, John Shelley and I have worked on a couple different projects where what you're asking for would be extremely useful. And we have debated somewhat as to whether or not the output of such information would be best placed in the standard out, standard error file, but it has also been proposed that a third file be introduced called an info file. So instead of a .i5 or a .05 or .e5, you'd have a .i5. And just the same, you would be able to combine that with the -j option to combine them all in whatever combination you want to combine them. And I think that getting more feedback to users in terms of what PBS thinks went right or wrong with the job is beneficial to everyone. So yes, that's another thing that it hasn't been on the table for a long period of time, but it's definitely something that's been discussed within the last few months. I'm sorry?
Is it back on the table?
I'm not sure exactly. John, do you know if there's a ticket open for that right now? If there isn't, we should open one.
Back on the table.
I noticed a bunch of people when the question was being asked, a bunch of heads were nodding.
I'll rephrase everything John
more than
says
just
is,
one.
if that's in 14.0, will you beta 14.0? So that was his response to every question that he's been given. Just because you couldn't hear him.
Just to add to that a little bit, what this actually came about in relation to was it's related to the work going on with C groups and being able to provide some type of informational output back to the user related specifically to C groups, and this coming from a hook. So a hook being able to directly write into standard out or standard error of the user's job, so ultimately they get to see it. And that is actually a function that is on the table for the next phase of the C groups development is to provide that capability. So even though we might not be introducing a new information file immediately, at least through hooks, you'd have the capability of writing that type of thing into the user's standard out so they would get to see it. So maybe that would be good enough in the interim, while we discuss what appropriately should go in an info file?
So Jim Scappa mentioned an idea that I'm not sure if he really meant it for PBS Pro in particular, but the idea of more open source middleware. And so if I just run wild with the idea and say we're going to open source PBS Pro and it becomes Open PBS, are you ready within the next 6 months, a year, some time frame to do that? Because at least NASA really enjoys being able to look at the source. Bhroam knows this particularly. And understanding our problems from a source level. And not every site can do this, not every site's interested, but for those that are, it's a great benefit. So if Jim Scappa said make it so, how long would it take?
How long would it take? Well, we have a number of source code customers today. So I don't know, is that more a business decision of?
So, I mean, he asked how long it would take. You just have to change the license. That's a sed script.
I mean, the source code's ready. But I think in terms of opening it up and as an open source, that's more a business topic.
So I don't know how many people know. I should ask, how many people here have source code licenses or have source code for PBS? Okay. How many? Yeah, I got some Altair people. And if you didn't know, we have a very liberal source code licensing policy, unless you're in one of those places that steals a lot of intellectual property. We don't charge for a source code license. We do make you sign a license agreement, but it's very liberal. You can actually exchange code with other people who have source code licenses, and we'll make it available to you. So. If you're interested, contact me.
Okay. One thing I've noticed for people who do have source code licenses, that if they do happen to find a bug, they not only go to our portal and log it, they also put in the code that will fix it. And we really like that.
Yeah.
That's like free engineering dollars.
Right.
Any other? I have a question. What projects are you working on that is not known to the product managers or on the roadmap? I can't tell you.
Yet.
No.
Yet. No. So the reality is that in general in the engineering team, everybody has some percentage of their time where they can be investigating new ideas. They don't necessarily even need to tell me about it initially. If they have a good idea, they want to try it out, they want to prototype it, they want to test it. It's not on the roadmap, the PMs don't know about it, but if it starts to get momentum and it starts to look good, then we work with PM and then we work with Bill and the business team and we put it on the roadmap. Our current test environment that we want to make available to users started out along those lines, just as an example. So are we working on things not on the roadmap? Yeah, a little bit of our time. Some are further along than others. Some I don't know about yet. They haven't told me. But we are always investigating what's going on out there in high performance computing and how can PBS address that. And it's not a large percentage of time. It's about 10% of people's time, but anybody has the ability to do that and to investigate areas that are of interest to them. Okay.
Can I modify that question slightly and get a response from these guys? Which is so, and this was actually from the audience. I'll just modify that a little bit. So, what have you just done, or you're just about to do, just about to release? So you're actually doing it. That is the most exciting thing that you're actually working on now. What was cool that you just did?
Well, for me, it's related to C group stuff, but in terms of like skunkworks projects, one that really doesn't have, it's been given some effort, and not by me personally, but one that I know is going on, is related to Docker. And I'm curious, because this was one of the questions that I wanted to ask the audience, how many people, how many customers of ours actually have an interest in utilizing Docker at some point in the future? Show of hands. Okay, well, that's significantly more than 0. So, I mean, it indicates support for something that we're thinking about, pursuing on a larger scale.
How about the rest of you? One thing that you're working on that you actually, that's cool, that you're excited about, or that you finished.
I'm almost always looking at ways to make the scheduler faster. I come up with an idea and I prototype it and I test it out and I'm like, oh cool, that worked. Oh, why didn't that work? But that's usually what I'm doing with that little 10% of my time.
Yeah, I'd say probably 60% of the scheduler improvements since 9.x have been Bhroam on his time playing around, looking for ways to improve things. Some things will affect certain customers more than others, but we put them in the software pretty quickly, and Bhroam has some benchmarks that he runs. And like I said, a lot of those changes have gone into the product.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm working on a special project right now. It's this thing called node ramp down, and being able to release like sister nodes on a job early while it's still running. So, I mean, when I was given the task, I was like, wow, how do we do that? And just a lot of iteration, and yeah, I got something to work, and a lot of housekeeping, and having the mother superior being able to handle that their list of nodes sort of shrunk, and only be able to communicate those nodes that are still left, that's still part of it. So yeah, that's really a cool project that I'm working on. So something we really extended PBS, and eventually we'll try to, if it's, decision is made to eventually roll this as part of our main line. That'll be cool.
Anybody else?
I can probably make a few comments. It's not just what I'm working on. However, I'm putting some of my cycles, even while I'm still writing code, even while there are a few teams that I'm working directly, I'm still writing code. And I personally am excited about the simplicity of what I see coming from, let's say, the mobile technology, the apps that come with mobile technology. And when I think about it, I look at things like automobile, right? It's like so much of complex mechanical stuff in it. But you go into driver's seat and all you have is a driving wheel and a couple of pedals. That's it. You don't really need to know about all the complexity that is behind the deck and under the hood. So I want to really, I'm revisiting our current technology and trying to make the same transition. It's very complex in some cases, but all of this complexity could be encapsulated, at least I think in majority of cases we can encapsulate it and make it as easy to use as a driving wheel and a couple of pedals in the car, or as those apps that do lots of things behind the scenes, all this networking, all sorts of things, and you just have a couple of buttons on the cell phones and it does something useful for you. So I want to bring our products to that level, and we're having a few interesting prototypes that we were showing to some of our customers. Some of them we did not show yet, but I think that's what I'm fascinated, like on a personal level. I think there is something there, and guys are supporting me. So we have a few people who actually share this vision.
So for me, the project I'm working on doesn't directly it's not a cool new feature that you're going to see and hold, but it helps us to get things out faster, more reliably to you. So in that sense, it's pretty cool. You'll never really know, but it will help you.
Okay.
That's a good point, because I mean, process improvements are not visible generally to our customers, but we're actively engaged in improving our own processes and the way that we release software to become as efficient as we can. So those are some other things that are going on behind the scenes.
And the top of my list of things that I don't really have much time to work on is making logging better and more humane.
Okay, other questions? I have a question for the audience. So think of your questions, but I have one. Just by a show of hands, how many people would like to see the install process be better? People care? Okay, non-Altair people.
I was just going to say, every single hand that went up, and John had two, were from Altair.
Yeah. Okay, so install not, it's okay the way it is, and which is fine. But I saw a couple of hands. Well, to me, is it when you go to install a new version of our product, is it a headache? Is it something that's pretty straightforward? There's a process to go through, it happens and it works? Are you always dreading the next release because of the install process? Just wondering from the point of view of the customers, how straightforward is it? Okay. Okay.
From my perspective, I install PBS when the system shows up, and I don't ever do it again. So, the last time I did it was almost 2 years ago, and it just works. It's not a problem. So I never even really go through that process, which is actually a compliment to you guys, because I don't have to deal with, I have to upgrade every single time because there's always a feature missing or something that's not working. So the install process just doesn't matter to me.
Okay. Thank you.
Speak.
I guess the one thing that I'd like to see is a way to automatically install MOMs from the initial install script on a big cluster, just because it's time consuming. But yeah, I don't want to install anywhere or anything like that. I like the way it works now. But the thing I would add is the ability to install the MOMs from a single point.
Right.
Great, thank you.
All right, I think my biggest concern about the install process is I want a well-documented, well-supported, rolling upgrade process that I can use, because we really are trying to get away from, currently we do really arduous upgrades over outage weekend, and I really want to get to the point where I can upgrade PBS and a new bug release comes out, and I can make it seamless without any outage, full upgrade.
Okay, thank you.
Jim, can you give an example of a product that maybe you utilize that does more along the lines of what you want it to?
Future PBS.
But we expect more of you guys than those other granddads.
We'd like to get to the point where arduous and PBS are not used in the same sentence.
Okay, so
that's good input. Thank you.
So for the installation process, and I guess this is to ask Steve, would you install PBS through PBS, or would you install PBS through PDSH or something like that?
Yeah.
Probably through PDSH or something like that.
Okay.
Just
So in our case, we're really trying to do node-by-node upgrades of things like firmware or any sort of software that we've got installed on compute nodes. So we would do something where we coordinate, basically job would complete, node would come free, node would go offline, PBS would get upgraded, bring the node back online. That would be our flow that would let us roll across the cluster over a period of a week or two, and then we're left with having to restart the server and the scheduler. So that would be my ideal scenario for upgrading. It's most of the pain is in upgrading the MOMs, not in updating the the primary scheduler and server.
Thank you.
May I follow up with one more? Which I also had written down. Is PBS sufficiently integrated with cluster management tools? So this is an example of something I would expect a cluster management tool to help with, which would be to tell the management tool, go install PBS Mom every place that I tell you to. Are we not integrated with these tools that would allow sites to do this?
My primary concern is what versions of Moms work with what servers and schedulers.
Okay.
That's the biggest single issue. We can use right cluster manager to do the automation already.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of with some scripting on our part, we can make that work. But it's the PBS side that I really want to make sure that we're doing the right thing. And I think that sort of rolling upgrade then is probably desirable at almost any site that's got a large number of emails. And so I think you guys are working toward this, but I don't really know what the status is. I really do want to say that would be a big improvement for us.
NASA agrees.
We are working on that, and in 13.0 we broke it, and we did it. We knew we were doing so, but the capabilities of 13.0 were so fundamental, and we were providing such great feature content that we felt like it was okay to do this once, but going forward we want to drastically improve it.
So that means it becomes part of the test suite now?
Of upgrades?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Because one thing that NASA has done with its source access is go in and fix that if it doesn't work. And so we were able to fix that for one part of the 13 upgrade, but that was just the scheduler, and that's not as important as the rest are. Okay, so for the other sites that have the source access, if you haven't done it, our recommendation is to think what are the big problems that you want PBS to solve, and you have source access so you can see how they're solving it today. And one thing that we've looked at a lot is the scheduling problem. And our cycle times are just too long for what we do for our largest system, Pleiades. And so we've seen what we think are different ways to do this that we proposed to Altair how to move forward with that. And so if you do, please get that time set aside for some developer you have on your team to look at the code, think about it, the future direction of your clusters, and what has to change going forward, because Altair is responsive. They're really open to hear about ideas for that. And as David said, they like code, so you can give them that, but also just ideas are good.
I think we have one more question we can take, and then anybody? Last question?
You'll have to use your own magic last question.
All right.
Better be good.
Uh-oh. How many, this question to the audience, how many people are interested in power management of their systems? Either the PM in the back of the room for power management raises his hand. Power management in terms of understanding the amount of power used by a job, or capping either on a job-by-job basis or system-wide. Any interest at your sites, or do you guys want to run full utilization all the time?
You asked a poor question.
Yeah.
This is one of those times when I wished you asked the question differently because you can't understand the answer.
How many people would be interested in a capability where you could monitor power and possibly cap power on your systems? Okay. Okay.
Hands are all half up. I assume that's because you're saving power.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your questions. Thank you to the team of people up here.
Can I get at my one quick question before we go?
Moderator?
Okay, well, if it's really good, go for it.
How many people use primetime, non-prime time? Excellent. Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Wow, thank you
folks.
all.
Really appreciate it. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.